In the previous spoiler, it was mentioned that Luo Feng had arrived at the most dangerous place of the 7th battlefield, the Star Tower. The intense summoning from within the tower reminded him of the armor beads and the 9 Calamities secret tome. Yet, when he first stepped into one of the forbidden spaces inside the Star Tower, he faintly sensed a hidden hostility. Over the course of his exploration, he entered nearly 10 such spaces in succession, each guarded by forbidden guardians of varying strength. In one particular space, the guardian relied solely on brute force to reach the level of a limit King Immortal, pressing King Heavy Arrow into constant retreat. This was undoubtedly the most perilous battle Luo Feng had faced since entering the Star Tower. If not for the timely opening of the passageway, prolonged combat might very well have led to King Heavy Arrow's demise. For this reason, even though the Guardian's power was astonishing, very few King Immortals lost their lives within the Star Tower. After all, regardless of strength, as long as one could endure until a passageway appeared, they could safely exit one forbidden space and proceed to the next. Otherwise, when faced with such formidable foes, adventurers would have long been forced into burning their divine bodies, rather than focusing on defense. It must be noted that severely injuring or even killing a guardian brought no benefit whatsoever, making the reckless expenditure of divine power clearly not worth the cost. After suffering ambushes in nearly 10 forbidden spaces in a row, King Heavy Arrow grew increasingly certain a heavy treasure-grade weapon, the Sealed Star, was about to emerge. Meanwhile, King Tianjin, who also faced guardians within his own space, managed to establish contact with Luo Feng and the human allies. To their surprise, every one of them was encountering similar predicaments in their respective spaces. This only strengthened their conviction that the Sealed Star's emergence was imminent. In fact, the Sealed Star was nothing more than a component used in the creation of the Star Tower. Just as when crafting fine works of art in real life, artisans often prepare extra materials to ensure the success of the piece. The Sealed Stars, too, had core, indispensable portions, alongside leftovers after the construction was complete. The ones that surfaced were precisely those surplus fragments that held no further use for the Star Tower itself. On the surface, the Sealed Star could not be paired with its wielder to execute offensive techniques, yet it possessed a terrifying power of sealing. After all, once a cultivator stepped into the immortal level, especially after refining an undying body, battles of the same tier can easily determine victory or defeat, yet killing one outright becomes nearly impossible, unless one paid the heavy price of burning their divine body. However, so long as one possesses the Sealed Star, even the slightest advantage over an opponent allows them to completely seal the foe after defeating them. As a heavy treasure, or equivalently a universe-venerable level weapon, once sealed by the Sealed Star, even a limit King Immortal like King Heavy Arrow has absolutely no chance of escape. The outcome is no different from demise. Precisely because of this, even though the Sealed Star possesses only the ability to seal, it still draws countless King Immortals into pursuit and brutal battles. Yet, this is merely the surface function of the Sealed Star. Those fortunate enough to obtain it are neither the true masters of the Star Tower nor in possession of a treasure capable of containing the Sealed Star, and thus cannot possibly know its deeper offensive means. Although the Sealed Star is of astonishing value, Luo Feng was not blinded by greed. In his view, to encounter the emergence of such a heavy treasure-grade weapon upon his very first entry into the Star Tower was by no means luck, nor could it be coincidence. Rather, it was highly likely a crisis concealed within one that could lead to his demise. Therefore, he grew increasingly vigilant, carefully comparing his experiences with records and intelligence, pondering whether there was anything unusual. Yet, Luo Feng was never able to detect any anomaly. On the contrary, ever since stepping into the 10th forbidden space, he had not encountered a single guardian. This was undoubtedly intentional on the part of the Star Tower, deliberately guiding all powerhouses to gradually converge upon the location where the Sealed Star would soon emerge. Before long, Luo Feng arrived at a forbidden space where 2 opposing camps had already gathered. Here, the automaton race's forces numbered nearly 6 times that of their rivals, and moreover, an automaton race powerhouse presiding as commander. On the surface, with each automaton clansman standing behind the might of a vast mechanical kingdom, they appeared to hold an overwhelming advantage. However, the situation did not tilt entirely in their favor. The reason was that the opposing camp was presided over by a limit King Immortal whose aura surged to the heavens. His true renown stemmed from his master, a Zerg Queen of the immortal level. This meant that the moment this limit King Immortal appeared, it was as though the Zerg Queen herself was present. It must be understood that even though the restrictions of the forbidden space prevented a Zerg Queen from unleashing a single strike empowered by the energy of millions of Zerg, she could still effortlessly command thousands of Zerg warriors to launch fierce assaults imbued with the laws, a power utterly unmatched by the automaton race. For this reason, at the same level, an immortal-level Zerg queen was often stronger than an automaton clansman. Unless one possessed extraordinarily great defenses and special means, even a Limit King Immortal would find it difficult to single-handedly withstand an immortal-level Zerg hive. Do not forget, a Zerg queen who could break through to the immortal realm already signified astonishing attainment in her comprehension of the laws. Coupled with the endless support of Zerg warriors, each queen could be considered an almost invincible existence beneath the universe venerables. Of course, compared with an invincible king immortal like King Jinyan, who was infinitely close to the level of a universe venerable and could even rival a low-tier universe venerable, a Zerg queen was still somewhat inferior. After all, King Jinyan alone was capable of ravaging an immortal-level Zerg hive. In contrast, Luo Feng, arriving alone in this forbidden space, appeared far weaker in momentum. Thus, he did not act rashly but instead kept a low profile, quietly standing to the side in the void. As for the powerhouses of the two camps, they were all focused on the sealed star and naturally would not lightly provoke Luo Feng into meaningless conflict. After all, Luo Feng's reputation was now far from small, and if they needlessly antagonized him and weakened their own strength, only to then fall into disadvantage during the final struggle for the sealed star, it would undoubtedly be an act of utter folly. Yet, a Peak King Immortal claiming to be a friend of King Purple Bell deliberately provoked Luo Feng, and when the entrance to the passage leading to the next forbidden space appeared, he even forced Luo Feng to take the rear. When it comes to treasures, the rule of the strong taking the lead was an unchanging law of eternity. That alien immortal behaved so precisely because Luo Feng was at a numerical disadvantage, his side the weakest among the three camps. But Luo Feng never placed him in his eyes, nor was he someone to be bullied or humiliated. As the provocations and insults grew ever more excessive, and the other party was about to strike, Luo Feng decisively counterattacked in an instant. As Luo Feng's sole slave, King Heavy Arrow naturally stood before his master in this moment of crisis. He stepped forward without hesitation, gripping his twin blades, and cleaved straight toward that alien King Immortal. Yet who would have thought the alien Immortal, far from being intimidated, was inwardly gleeful? After all, once Luo Feng acted, the automaton camp would surely be enraged, and all would attack as one. With such overwhelming numerical advantage on his side, he had nothing to fear. After all, under ordinary circumstances, even a Limit King Immortal, without burning their divine body, could shatter the divine body of a Peak King Immortal, but could hardly inflict true and fatal harm. Unexpectedly, with only a single strike, that alien immortal was utterly annihilated, perishing on the spot. It must be known that Luo Feng had long since purchased vast quantities of venom capable of corroding even immortal divine bodies, and had laced King Heavy Arrow's weapons with it. Without a powerful defensive heavy treasure-grade weapon like Purple Bell to shield one's body, breaking through the defenses of a Peak King Immortal and striking their divine body was almost effortless for a Limit King Immortal. Once the venom touched the divine body, so long as the dosage was sufficient, it could instantly erode an immortal body into nothingness. Witnessing their ally from the same camp mercilessly slain, the automaton-led powerhouses naturally voiced their outrage, demanding an explanation. However, the fact remained, the provocation had first come from that alien immortal, and the dignity of a true powerhouse could never be trampled upon. Thus, Luo Feng's killing him was entirely justifiable. As such, the automaton strongmen merely needed to put on a show of anger on the surface, while Luo Feng, by giving them a slight step down, allowed both sides to avoid needless conflict over a trivial matter. After all, for King Heavy Arrow to slay a Peak King Immortal so easily without even burning his divine body meant that both the automatons and the Zerg could infer that Luo Feng commanded some extremely rare and terrifying means. With such a costly trump card at his disposal, who could guarantee he did not possess a doomsday strike capable of dragging both sides into mutual destruction? Weighing the risks, the only sensible course was to prioritize seizing the sealed star, rather than wasting precious strength over the death of a subordinate. Upon arriving at the next forbidden space, Luo Feng finally encountered fellow human King Immortals, including King Tianjin, and immediately joined forces with his own camp, advancing together in unity. It is worth mentioning that although King Tianjin was only a Peak King Immortal, he was a true master in the field of soul. Even with the slightest burning of his divine body, he could unleash illusions or soul strikes sufficient to threaten even a Limit King Immortal. It must be understood that most Limit King Immortals stood at the summit of the immortal level not because of their souls, but because they had stacked their physical strength through layers of amplifying secret techniques, giving them at least 10 times the physical might of a Peak King Immortal. This was precisely why, even though King Jinyan was neither a spiritual master nor an illusionist, he still spent billions of years honing his craft, eventually creating a pinnacle secret technique of soul defense. Only through such means could one minimize the effects of illusion and soul attacks, ensuring that they could always fight with their full strength in battle. For this very reason, treasures designed for soul defense were often valued far above weapons of the same level. Although King Tianjin, as a peak king immortal and a true master in the field of soul, could bring great support to the human camp, he still held no advantage when compared with the Zerg Queen. After all, every Zerg Queen was herself a grandmaster in the field of the soul, and to inflict serious damage upon them on the soul level was nearly impossible. Luo Feng and his companions pressed onward, passing through nearly 10 more forbidden spaces in succession. The numbers of powerhouses from all factions rose sharply, and in less than a single day, their total had already surpassed 10,000. Among them, the demon race revealed a formidable figure whose aura not only overshadowed that of the immortal-level Zerg Queen, but even approached the realm of the invincible King Immortals. Within the human camp, more than 5,000 strongmen had gathered, and they soon welcomed the arrival of the renowned King Seven Swords, a limit King Immortal of Hugh Jack's dojo, and a direct disciple of a Universe Master. With such status and prestige, the human camp's powerhouses naturally rallied under his lead, and Luo Feng was no exception. Of course, if the human powerhouses had known Luo Feng's true identity, where he had earned the title of a king even back when he was only at the World Master level, their regard for him would certainly not fall short of their esteem for the King's Seven Swords. After all, though King Seven Swords' talent far outstripped Bolan's and shone brilliantly within Hugh Jack's dojo, when compared with heaven-defying geniuses like Ku Di and Luo Feng, he paled in comparison. Yet, as Luo Feng remained the top target on the assassination list of the hostile factions, in such a gathering of tens of thousands of King Immortals, it was only natural for him to act with utmost low profile. As time passed, the number of gathered powerhouses continued to surge, until they numbered in the hundreds of thousands. The momentum was so overwhelming it made hearts tremble. Especially in the presence of beings like the human King Seven Swords and the automaton's King Lifefall existences nearing the invincible King Immortal realm, making many weaker King Immortals quickly recognized that they had no hope of seizing the treasure. One after another, they quietly withdrew, no longer following the Grand Host into the void passage where the sealed star was about to appear. Compared to those nearing the level of invincible King Immortals, King Tianjin and other weaker King Immortals had no choice but to secretly contact their allies and comrades, temporarily forming 1,000-man squads to increase their chances of seizing the sealed star through combined strength. As for pinnacle powerhouses like King Seven Swords, as long as they offered sufficient reward, there would naturally be others willing to serve them and obey their orders. In this way, even if they failed to claim the sealed star, they could still gain benefits from King Seven Swords and avoid leaving empty-handed. Before long, a sealed star finally broke through the energy barrier within the star tower, manifesting in the void. In an instant, countless powerhouses unleashed spatial lockdown to prevent others from teleporting close, and the battlefield exploded into chaos. A flood of King Immortals surged forward, torrents of violent energy pouring out like madness. Though its might could not compare to the Zerg Queen commanding her Zerg warriors, the sheer numbers involved were so overwhelming that their combined force was enough to annihilate even a universe venerable. Even those who struggled desperately to defend themselves were swept aside along with the sealed star, hurled directly into the invisible barrier and instantly torn apart by its energy. Their divine bodies were annihilated on the spot. Countless treasures and weapons also failed to withstand the impact, reduced to ash in moments, while the surviving relics were ejected and repelled by the barrier, sparking further battles among the powerhouses. The scene was pure chaos. As for figures of the King Seven Swords' and King Lifefall's level, there was no need for them to act rashly. Before the exit passage emerged, all they needed to do was wait. After all, with their strength, even if someone else managed to seize it by chance, it would inevitably be snatched away with ease. By contrast, the King Seven Swords himself, being ranked as the third target on the automaton assassination list, was the true prey of King Lifefall on this expedition. At once, King Lifefall led over 100 automaton elites, joined by nearly 1,000 alien allies, to unleash the fiercest strike with the aid of powerful treasures. The King Seven Swords, however, immediately countered, taking out a treasure he had obtained from the ancestral god sect, which is several tiers superior to that wielded by King Lifefall, and with his allies laid down defenses that instantly dissolved the assault. Soon after, tens of thousands of exits finally appeared. The frenzied slaughter left many weaker powerhouses utterly disheartened, prompting them to turn back and flee toward the exits. Luo Feng, however, had never once set his sights on the sealed star. What he truly paid attention to was whether any anomalies would appear. Even so, amidst the chaos, he still swept up relics worth over 100 billion mixed yuan units. At this moment, a demon race powerhouse who had peak king immortal level and skilled in the field of soul, led over a dozen powerhouses to suddenly besiege Luo Feng's human squad, plunging them into an unprecedented crisis. Yet Luo Feng had no idea that this was a trap orchestrated entirely by King Tianjin himself. King Tianjin had long since realized he had no hope of seizing the sealed star. His true goal was the boundless wealth left behind by perished powerhouses. And Luo Feng, the King Blade River, who obtained the treasure of the sacrificial tower, his immense wealth went without saying. That demon peak king immortal was, in fact, none other than King Tianjin's sole slave. Colluding seamlessly, they staged the scene so that when Luo Feng saw King Tianjin seemingly trapped in danger, he rushed in earnestly to help, only to fall straight into their snare. Suddenly, King Tianjin secretly added a surge of force, driving Luo Feng straight toward the energy barrier. At the same time, Luo Feng was struck by an illusion. Although his unyielding willpower allowed him to break free in the final moment, he no longer had time to slow down and avoid the barrier. If King Tianjin had chosen to let his slave unleash a direct soul attack instead of an illusion, Luo Feng's human body would have been doomed without question since his soul defense was only at a high-tier marquee immortal level. This also explained why, after leaving Taiwo's squad in Misty Sand Island, especially after creating his pinnacle secret technique, Luo Feng rarely used spiritual weapons. The offensive power he could unleash as a spiritual power wielder was far too limited. Illusion attacks could cause momentary disruption, but before Luo Feng's resolute will, they could be pierced and shattered almost instantly. Just as he was about to detonate his strongest fire god origin crystal, planning to use the violent explosive shockwave to forcefully break free, and perhaps even kill King Tianjin in the process, a passageway exit suddenly appeared behind him. Following it came an irresistible force of immense pull, along with a warmth voice that struck directly into his mind. Luo Feng, utterly powerless to resist, was swept instantly into the spatial exit. Who was manipulating events from behind the scenes? Could Luo Feng escape death by this twist of fate? Stay tuned for the next spoiler, where I will reveal everything to you. Well, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching this video. Wish you a wonderful day.